Are you being secretly chemically castrated and you don't even realize it? Well, gentlemen, I've got some unfortunate news for you today. I'm going to be exposing some of the chemicals that you're bombarded with on a daily basis, which are literally sterilizing you. Would you like to learn more? Well, stick around and watch this video. My name is Sterling Cooper. I'm an award-winning adult film star. I'm also a former high-class male companion, and this is my YouTube channel. Welcome. So your body is being bombarded daily by a whole variety of estrogen-mimicking compounds. Now, everyone understands, for the most part, understands the difference between estrogen and testosterone. These are kind of the two different human sex hormones. Now, our bodies have both. Both men and women have both estrogen and testosterone. And you need both for healthy hormonal balance. Now, the problem comes when you get an excess of one. And in particular for guys, having an excess of estrogen and a significant reduction in testosterone leads to a whole host of unhealthy symptoms. Not just depression, anxiety, mood swings, but also a lot of physical symptoms like rapid fat gain, weight gain, right? Inflammation, a whole variety of different symptoms from having your hormonal balances off. And this is why being bombarded with estrogen mimicking compounds on the daily is extremely bad for us and extremely dangerous for our sperm count. So when I'm talking about estrogen mimicking compounds, these aren't exactly estrogen, but they're similar enough in chemical structure such that when they're in our bodies, they're able to bind to the same kind of receptors that estrogen does when it's in our body as well. And what this means is it causes the exact same symptoms and knock-on effects as if we had just ingested or injected natural estrogen into our bodies. Now, unfortunately, these estrogen-mimicking compounds, as I'm about to explain to you, are all around us. You're constantly coming in contact with them. And the interesting thing about them is that they hide in your fat cells. And another interesting thing about them is that, as I mentioned before, the more a man's estrogen levels increase, the more he puts on fat. So, this is a bit of a negative feedback loop, a bit of a negative spiral. You get bombarded with these estrogen-mimicking compounds, they cause you to gain more fat, and then they hide within that fat. It's this compounding effect. So, what are they, and what the hell can we do about them? So it's important to note that everything I'm teaching you here today comes from the research accumulated and studied by Mr. Anthony J. in his book, Estrogen. Now, I highly recommend that you go out and read this book in its entirety. It will make you a little bit paranoid, yes, but it gives you the information you need to know in order to prevent this stuff from affecting your life, and it gives you prescriptions at the very end of the book as well. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a little bit of guidance on it too. So stick around for that. Now, the first type of estrogen mimicking compound that you're likely to come into contact with regularly is phytoestrogens. Now, we get into contact with these through our diet. In particular, they are very, very prevalent in soy and in flax. These have a very, very high phytoestrogen count. So, if you can avoid ingesting these in your diet on a regular, that's going to significantly reduce your phytoestrogen exposure. The term soy boy is a real thing. Now, the next type of estrogen mimicking compound you're likely to come in contact with is mycoestrogens. Now, these come from fungus and mold spores, and you're actually likely to come into contact with these, oddly enough, through grains, because grains tend to get stored for long periods of time in silos, so corn and wheat and these kind of things. They tend to sit there for a long period of time and they get exposed to spores, and those spores can multiply and basically infect the grain supplies. But on such a small scale that's not enough to spoil the food, but they are still prevalent and they're still everywhere. And so these spores produce their mycoestrogens, which, when they get into your body, produce the same effect as natural estrogen. The next nasty bugger to look out for is atrazine. Now, atrazine is a herbicide. It's very, very common in the United States, and unfortunately, it contaminates a lot of the drinking water. Now, if you live in Europe, you're lucky because they outlawed that stuff in Europe. So, Americans, unfortunately, you've been screwed over there, and you have to be aware of your atrazine exposure. Next up, we have triclosan and alkyl phenols, also known as APEs, APEs. These are in cleaning products, soaps, and lubricants. Now, I know this sucks, but you really have to be aware and pay attention to the kinds of products you're buying, which you're going to use to clean your clothes, clean your dishes, clean your body. Because if they contain these things, they're coming in direct contact with your skin cells, which have a lot of fat cells, which these compounds are able to penetrate, get into, hide in, and affect your body, affect your hormonal levels. Next up, we have benzophenone and 4-MBC. These are found in sunscreens and even in some hand soaps. Again, I'm all for people getting out in the sun and getting natural vitamin D on their skin. Obviously, don't be a total dumbass and go out and get scorched to a cinder, but be aware of using sunscreens because they contain a lot of these estrogen-mimicking compounds, benzophenones, and that stuff is wreaking havoc, once again, with your hormonal system. Here's another really common one. Red number 3 and red number 40, the artificial red food coloring additives. These things, once again, have the necessary chemical structure to basically mimic estrogen within your body and cause similar effects. So, when you're out shopping for food, in general, it's always a good idea to avoid artificial foods and foods with artificial colorings, artificial flavorings, additives. So, first and foremost, take that approach, but be even more aware if it has red number 40 or red number 3. Red food coloring is especially bad for you. Next up, we have parabens. These are the fragrance estrogens. They're found in a lot of cosmetics, surprise, surprise, and a lot of laundry detergents as well. Now, one more thing I should add on, which I forgot to mention in the phytoestrogen section, is lavender. You want to watch out for anything that contains lavender, because lavender is packed full of phytoestrogens as well. So, while you're also on the lookout for parabens with your, laundry detergents and things, try to avoid things that are scented with lavender as well. Next up, we have phthalates. Now, this is an additive that is used in plastics. Now, it is frequently seen in a lot of medical devices, it's seen in plastic wrap, and it's also seen in cash register receipts. Like I said, this stuff is everywhere, guys. So take this, with the appropriate attitude. Yes, it might make you a bit paranoid, but understand that knowing this is half the battle. Understanding where all this stuff's coming from, that it's affecting you, is the first step in actually fixing this problem. So don't get too paranoid just yet. In terms of plastics, we also have BPA and BPS. Those stand for bisphenol A and bisphenol S. Now, these are a main ingredient in everyday commercial plastics. This is why it's a good idea generally to not eat or drink out of plastics. Try to substitute, your plastic drinking bottles or plastic cups for glass or metal, right? Instead of using, and if you need, a sort of takeaway microwave safe container, rather than using a plastic one, use a silicone one. Silicone doesn't have these kind of estrogen mimicking compounds as part of a structure. It's just silicone. So they're far safer. So there's little choices you can make in your everyday life, which means you can completely avoid exposure to these compounds on a regular basis. And avoiding plastic is first and foremost of them. This next one is a biggie. EE2, which is 17A ethinyl estradiol. This is the birth control estrogen. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, Stirling, birth control is for the ladies. I don't take birth control pills. And you're probably right, you don't. However, the unfortunate reality is when women take the birth control pill, a large chunk of it gets passed out through their urine. Right? It's not all absorbed, it's not all processed, it's passed out through the urine. What happens then? That urine ends up in the water table, and that then ends up in the municipal water supply. Now, you might be thinking, but don't they filter the municipal water supply? They do, but they only filter for bacteria and viruses. The municipal water supply isn't filtered for the vast array of organic compounds that end up in the municipal water supply. First and foremost of those being EE2, the birth control estrogen. Now, what that means is your drinking water, your shower water, all the water that you come into contact with on a daily basis that comes from the municipal water supply is contaminated with the birth control estrogen. And we know this because water supplies all around the world have been tested and have been found to contain EE2 in them. So, how do you avoid that? Well, one of the best things you can do for getting this out of your water supply is to use an activated charcoal water filter. Activated charcoal, forget all this like sand and silica and all that crap. Activated charcoal is the one you want because that filters out organic compounds. And that's the only thing, by the way, that in most commercial filters that'll actually filter out organic compounds. All this other stuff, all these other filters that filter out like fluoride, etc. from your drinking water, they don't filter out the organic compounds. So you need activated charcoal in your water filters to make this work. I personally use a Berkey water filter on my kitchen counter. I fill that up and I drink out of that. It filters all the crap that I need it to filter out of the municipal water supply, and then I'm good to go. You can also use the same activated charcoal filters if you want to go next step further on your shower heads and on your kitchen sink taps, so that when you're washing everything and you're washing your body in the shower, you're again not exposing your skin to EE2. It's a great idea. Now that you know a bunch of things are causing your testosterone levels to plummet, it's about time you boost them instead. So try tanning your sack and learn the ancient secrets of the sun right here.